Hello YouTube, Suicide for Celluloid here. I had the lovely opportunity to have a conversation with both Theo Warner and Theoretical Bullshit um, regarding regarding the topic of morality, and I'm not sure if Theoretical Bullshit actually uh, watched the last video that I posted. Um, or if he has yet, but in some way I was compelled to draw all the threads from my previous critique together into an overarching thesis, um, an overarching claim that uh, the 5 or 6 points that I made in the last video are essentially arguments to support the thesis. Um, Hopefully that will make the argument seem much more distilled and perhaps much more powerful. And that central thesis, I think, which the other arguments more or less orbit around, is that New Atheist ethics, in some sense, has taken what I would view to be the worst part about Christian ethics and preserved that. Um, Now, what is the worst part about Christian ethics that New Atheism, I think, has taken on? Um, uh, that is the fact that it conceives of ethics um, as a series of relations to to prohibitions and to obligations. That is, this establishes a kind of bondage for the individual. I think this is well noted in the Christian tradition. I think that Christians would affirm that claim, that their ethics creates a state of bondage. There's a lot of really interesting and sometimes quite beautiful theological work on this. Um, uh, but I think that that relation of bondage is ultimately destructive to the individual, and I think that is carried over in in uh, in the new atheist forms of ethics. I think that because what I referred to now in two separate videos, the new atheism exemplifies a kind of what I've called an anti-religious morality. That is, a morality that is constructed entirely on the grounds of arguing with the religious, letting the religious people define the conversation, the grounds for the conversation, um, and the parameters therein. And I think that the relation to obligation and the relation to prohibition, which are more or less two sides of the same coin, uh, that being the foundation for conversation about ethics, is first of all not necessary to ethics, and second of all, something that I just simply don't want uh, in thinking about ethics. I think that that if ethics is regulative, if ethics is something that is supposed to determine my actions and my behaviors and how I conceive of those actions and behaviors, I think if that's the case, then it doesn't. I don't want it to be about obligations and prohibitions. This isn't an argument of logical consistency. This is or of the logical consistency of the positions or anything like that. It's simply a statement of my distaste for such for this for this scheme. I think that ethics should be a creative space, a space of self-invention, a joyous and even playful space, a space through which we may realize ourselves, in which we may express our being in higher forms, whatever that means for whoever is involved. And I think all of that can be is an ethical. All of that is ethics in a certain way. It's just a very different way of reading the question of, what is the good? What should I do? What should I not do? There's no reason to make it There's no reason to make it a conversation of bondage, and I think that the element of bondage is contained within the formal structure of the conversation. In the conversation with Theoretical Bullshit, which I wish was aired, but it ended up not being for a couple reasons. One point that I think he and I agreed upon was that the New Atheist Morality does share a formal structure with Christian morality. That formal structure being the Christian morality will make... The idea is that you have ethics, you have all these prohibitions and obligations, and those are justified by recourse to something outside of that, what's traditionally called a transcendental signifier, right? The idea that you have something that is beyond ethics, which forms the justification for ethics. And therefore all ethics constructs itself in relation to that transcendental signifier. God, obviously, in the case of the Christian, or probably in the case of the broader category of the theist in general, if that category makes sense. I'm not sure it does. And in the case of someone like Sam Harris, it's well-being. Human well-being forms the grounds, and ethical judgments, ethical statements, ethical actions, etc., are constructed with respect to this abstract concept. That formal structure, transcendental signifier, forming the foundation for the discourse of ethics, is the problem to me. And I don't think that the New Atheist answer to theistic morality, which basically says, no, we don't need God. We can substitute God for human well-being, whatever that is, and preserve the exact same logical structure. This, to me, preserves all of the problems with theistic morality as being essentially propagating a mode of bondage, propagating a destruction of the subject, in a way. There's something, what Nietzsche would call life-denying. All of that is then carried over. All of those problems are carried over. So then you end up with, to support that claim, or like the consequences of that claim are outlined in the previous video. So things like autonomy, what I consider, if you take autonomy to be a value, then evaluating things on the grounds of perceived consequences is, it threatens autonomy as a value. The abnegation of moral responsibility on the grounds of an alienated category. I mean, this is the case in theistic morality, and in the previous video I actually used an example of theistic morality and showed, tried to show how the same formal structure can produce the same results. Um, uh, so abnegation of moral responsibility, human autonomy, um, the inability to conceive of new modes of ethical being. Um, these all emerge from just simply carrying over theistic morality, or the formal structure of theistic morality into the new atheist morality. Um, I don't think that there's any reason for a human being to conceive of his ethical life as a form of bondage, is what I want to. That's sort of the center of what I'm saying. I think that it is. It's something that like offends me in a certain way. I don't mean that in the way of like in the sort of politically correct sense, but it like it feels repulsive to me. And I hope that that central claim will help to clear up the sort of ancillary claims um, that emerged in the previous video. I know that this is poor essay structure for me to state the thesis last, but yeah. I hope the video finds you well. I'm going to post this as a final response to Theoretical Bullshits on his treatise on morality video, in the hopes that he that this will help to clarify my attack on his position, and I would invite him and love to have another conversation with him. I had a wonderful time the other night, and I'd like it to be aired or broadcast, because I thought that we had a great conversation, and I thought that it would be valuable to see that kind of conversation go down. And yeah, so I think that this is probably going to be my last statement on new atheist morality. Have a good day. Thank you very much, and enjoy yourselves.